The Economic Development Authority meeting for September 8th, 2014 to order. First order of business is to approve the agenda. Ed, any changes to that agenda?
No, there are not, Mr. Mayor.
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've approved the agenda. There are two items on the agenda. One is the minutes, and I guess we can just approve those, and then you can, Ed, you can lead us into the bylaw discussion. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 25th, 2014 EDA meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've approved the minutes. Ed, you want to talk about the EDA bylaws, the other item on the agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If you can find it on the iPad, huh?
There you go. Our bond counsel for the EDA is Jenny Bolton, and she has recommended that the EDA adopt amended and restated bylaws. This is primarily due to the form of government change from city administrator to city manager, and also references debt management policy. And we just went through the issuance of debt for the new City Hall library. So she's recommending that the bylaws, which are attached in your packet along with the other information, should be approved.
So any questions or comments from the commission?
I guess I had just
Joe?
one quick question, Mr. Mayor. I only see two spots here where there were grammatical changes. Where were the actual changes? I guess there was no strike through and underline or...
You're talking about the bylaws?
Yeah.
The tracking changes reference typographical errors or grammar. So this is a new set of bylaws. I don't
It's
have
a
the
brand new
changes
set.
from the old one.
Okay, so there's no real, I guess, material changes. It operates the same. It's just...
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we no
Perfect.
longer have a city administrator, we have a city manager.
City manager, so that was changed.
And other than the wording, the actual title, the change to a city manager didn't have any functional effect on how the EDA operates or any of the authority that the city manager has
Correct.
as opposed to an administrator.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the amended, let's see here, bylaws of the Economic Development Authority of the City of Victoria.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've approved the resolution. It's the only order of business on the agenda tonight. Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to discuss? If not, we'll adjourn. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Joe?
Oh, I
I
thought you
said-
had something
I
to talk
moved
about,
it.
so, okay.
You said so moved.
So moved. And we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. We'll be back at the regular city council meeting for September 8th, 2014 for the City of Victoria in session. The first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we'll adopt the agenda. Are there any changes, Ed, to the agenda?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. No, there are no changes.
Can I have a motion, please, to adopt the agenda?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've adopted the agenda. Next item is the open forum. It's an opportunity for citizens to address the council on the items not on the current agenda. Does anybody wish to address the council? Mr. Gooby, you want to address? Please go to the podium and state your name and address. And we'd ask you to limit your comments to 5 minutes.
Yes. My name is Lawrence Scooby. I live at 7848 Bavaria Road. And if it's permissible, I'd like to distribute a copy of my remarks to each of the council members before I start. Is this
Sure.
good?
These are the comments you're going to make?
Thank you.
These are the comments I'm going to make.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I take issue with the statement you made at the last council meeting that was published in last week's Victoria Gazette and Chanhassen Villager regarding the litigation in which you and 3 members of the council are involved. It's unfortunate that you would use your office and position to read that carefully worded statement into the record. In addition, the fact that your statement at the last council meeting was documented in its entirety in the Victoria and Chanhassen newspapers, but inaccurately summarized in 2 sentences in the draft meeting minutes is also problematic. Your statement was a carefully worded attempt to shift the onus onto the residents of the city who are simply calling you to account for practices that you engaged in while serving in a position of trust for the city. The question you raise is whether you and other defendants broke the law. You and the other defendants have not denied breaking the law. The pertinent question is to whether or not you did so knowingly and willfully. This can only be resolved in court. If you had not broken the law, a lawsuit to determine whether or not you did so with knowledge and intent would not be necessary. The fact is that the cost of the litigation is the result of your actions and not attributable to the citizens who are attempting to hold you to account. The $200,000 you mentioned is the cumulative amount of an insurance policy that is carried by the League of Minnesota Cities, which covers you and the 3 members of the council named in the lawsuit. The cost of this policy, if the cost of this policy goes up in the future because of this lawsuit, is not that cost a direct result of your failure to obey the open meeting law? You correctly stated that the city may reimburse legal costs in excess of $200,000 incurred in your defense. However, if you are found guilty of intentionally violating the open meeting law, why should the citizens of this community reimburse you? Finally, you indicated that the attorney for the plaintiffs in this case has taken the case pro bono and that the plaintiffs are incurring no legal cost. This is only half the truth. To my knowledge, the plaintiffs have committed hundreds of hours to gathering and analyzing evidence. In addition, the attorney for the plaintiffs works for a large, nationally recognized law firm who undertook this case pro bono only after the managing partners of his firm found that the case had merit and was in the public interest. Your statement made at the last meeting of the City Council and published in the newspapers is simply an attempt to manipulate public opinion. You should tell the whole honest truth or remain silent. I understand the political motive for shifting the blame, but it's not right, and the citizens of Victoria deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gooby. Just for the record, I stand by the document that I read and was published in the paper. And beyond that, we're advised by legal counsel not to comment on the merits of the case. Believe me, I would love to. But I stand by the letter the statement that I read at the meeting and was published in the newspapers. Anybody else want to make a comment? If not, we'll just proceed. Does anybody else wish to address the council? We have no visitors' presentation. Next is the consent agenda, where all items are approved with, with one motion. unless one of the council members wishes to remove one of the items, one or more of the items from the consent agenda. Anybody wish to remove anything? And if not, would somebody make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approve the consent agenda. Payment of the bills, the claims roster. We need a motion to approve the claims.
I move approval of the September 8th, 2014 claims roster in the amount of $1,440,172.98.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've approved the claims roster. We have some donations tonight. Would someone like to approve the donation?
I move that we accept resolution number 1468, a resolution accepting the donations from Amanda and Timothy Fahey for $75 designated for the fire department, and the Jorgensens for $100 designated for the fire department. We thank both of those tonight and appreciate their generosity to the fire department.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for the donations. We've accepted the donations. There's no public hearing tonight. We have unfinished business. First item is the approval of the personnel policy, the amendments to that. Ed?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. At the last council meeting, the council reviewed a proposed personnel policy and employee handbook. The manual or the handbook was pretty much approved in its entirety with a couple of exceptions. I got to pull up my screen here to get to that. Thank you. There was a discussion on the section dealing with the sick leave severance for new employees and whether that is a hiring incentive for employees. And the council asked the staff to look into alternatives for recruitment rather than having the sick leave severance for newly hired employees. The council also asked about any alternatives that might could take the place of the suggested fire department dinner as a reward for their safety program. So the options for the sick leave severance were to either maintain the sick leave severance for new employees, pay sick severance to a health care savings plan. This would be a potential tax-free option for employees. Reduce the sick leave severance for new employees, which in some cases we could reduce it. As examples, 720 hours, 600 hours, 540 hours, or 320 hours, or some other number that the council would deem appropriate. And then we could also look at reducing the percentage of the sick leave paid out, and options there would be 30% after 15 years of service, or another percentage deemed appropriate by the council. So an example there would be if you reduced it to 720 hours with 30% of payout, for an employee making $25 an hour, this would be $5,400 paid out after 15 years of service. Another alternative would be to remove the sick leave and put it into place as an alternative hiring incentive for deferred compensation. Right now, employees are able to take advantage of deferred compensation on their own, but if the city were to pay for the deferred compensation and you use, like, say, a fixed amount of $1,000, the annual appropriation for all 19 full-time employees and prorated for a 0.8 full-time employee would cost the city about $19,800. Another option would be to create a tuition reimbursement program. And there you would have, a lot of cities are doing this, where they have an education program that would pay for 100% of the tuition or a percentage based on the grade received in the class. So like say if they received an A, they would get 90%, a B 80%, or a C a 70%. And then that the program would have to be approved by the supervisor and the city manager. And requirements on the grades or passing could be incorporated into the program, and for purposes of budgeting, the city would budget based on how many they would expect to have participating in the program for the coming year. Regarding the fire department, although the intent was really to look at the safety program alternatives and reward them with a dinner, there's really limited options other than that for different rewards, and we took a look at what their hourly rate is that they get for being on call or when they respond to a fire and through their training, and they're at $8.50 an hour. This is on the low end of the scale in the cities around us, and I think it would be an opportunity to increase that, giving the department an opportunity for better recruitment and retention, and that way you could get away from that dinner idea, and I think really would reward them if we could increase the hourly rate. I've heard that as a suggestion made by the chief and others, and I really think that that's worth taking a look at. So an option to go from $8.50 to $9 or $9.50 an hour, and that would be something to look at. So anyway, the recommendation from staff, and I have Jessica here as well if you have any questions for her, because she did some of the research on these other communities, would be to either keep the sick leave severance as a tool, or if you're not inclined to do so, look at reducing the number of hours or considering the tuition reimbursement or the mandatory deferred comp program, and on the fire department to look at increasing the wage to $9 an hour.
Council opinions.
Well, I actually think this brought up more questions than it answered them for me, in a couple of ways. One, I'm not sure I fully understand the impact to the healthcare piece. I think last time I was asking about, is there an advantage to going that direction for the employer, for us? I'm assuming it's for both, but I don't know if the preference would be for employees to have that kind of option in terms of where the money goes to. And again, it's tax-free for the employee, but again, does that impact us in any way differently comparatively? I think also the other questions that it brought up were, it feels like we should have an education reimbursement program of some kind anyways. Would be something I would like us to look at, whether it's not for the coming year, but in future, it's something that I think should be there. So tuition reimbursement. The other piece is the fire department piece, and that's a whole nother level that I feel we need to have a deep conversation on again, maybe, or again, I was not able to attend that particular meeting, and so I do think an increase is in order. I was very shocked to see where we are in comparison. And so, again, I don't know if that's a decision that needs to be made tonight, but it's something we need to look at, and then what will be the impact of these decisions on the budget, since we're looking at that now.
Yeah, we would have, as far as the fire department is concerned, we would have adequate funds within the budget currently to cover that extra cost.
To move it up to $9 per hour?
To go from $8.50 to $9 or $9.50.
And would that only cover the current way that we pay them, or would that also cover additional items as noted in the example in here, that some pay for example, let's see, where did it go? There was call pay per hour, there was drill pay.
The only pay that they get beyond when they respond to a fire, they get the $8.50 an hour, and then they also get it when they go to training. So it's drill pay and or meeting.
So it is drill pay?
Yeah.
Okay, because we show it blank here right now, so I wasn't sure.
No, it's drill pay.
Oh, wait, drill pay per hour, I see it. Sorry, I was reading the wrong column.
I just have a question related to that. If we're at 850 now, why move to 9 and why not 10?
Or at least even, yeah.
If we're competing against all these other cities, and we have two larger cities or two cities, and we're slated to be one of the larger ones, why wouldn't we want to pay a higher fee to make sure we get the people we need?
It's basically, I guess, my conservatism coming out. I think a gradual increase rather than one big one. So I thought it was a fair, it would put us in the middle of the pack.
What does your instinct tell you about if it was $10? Is there money in the budget to cover that?
I have to look at Kelly.
Where'd Kelly?
Kelly, did you get the question?
Hourly rates for fire, currently $8.50. The recommendation is to take it to $9. What the suggestion was, why not go to $10?
Right now, I believe we have $68,000 total budgeted for fire department wages, and a portion of that is officers, so that part wouldn't be changing. So I would guesstimate maybe $60,000 of that is the wages part. That would be the training, the fire calls, et cetera. So if we went from $8.50 to $10,
$1.50.
$1.50 an hour, we'd probably have to add something to the budget. Trying to do the math quick in my head. It's about a 20% increase if you went from $8.50 to $10.
So I guess that my mindset on this is that if we're going to fix something, assuming it's broken, let's fix it rather than take it a half step, so.
I agree. I think $10 is the minimum. Can we get a number, kind of, we did before this regular meeting, can we add that number or talk about it tonight in the budget discussion and get that as a placeholder in there?
Yep, I can sit down and work on some numbers to see what we're looking at. I'm guessing it's probably somewhere, $5,000, $10,000 additional for the budget.
And then we could have Andrew come in.
Tom, do you have any?
I think, in general, I agree. I mean, fire department staffing is an important topic that we've got to address. I'm not sure whether 50 cents or $1 an hour is the, difference maker here, but certainly I'd like the opinion of the chief, and if that's something that he feels would enhance his ability to attract and retain, then absolutely. In the absence of that, maybe a bigger question about where are we going long term, and how are we going to budget the overall personnel expense for the fire department. If we're going to add a full-time chief, I mean, let's put the money where it's really going to matter, I guess is what I'm thinking.
The communities around us remind us the levels they pay. It's in here.
Yeah, it was, so Chanhassen and Chaska were at 10.
That's what I recall.
Yeah.
Yes, both Chanhassen and Chaska have full-time fire chiefs.
Well, to me, if they're both at 10, I mean, I wonder when it went to 850. A while ago, I bet.
Yes, it's been that way for several years.
Even Carver pays $975, and they pay their chief $3,500. We pay ours $850, and we pay our chief $2,050.
Yeah, and Waconia as well is at 10, so, I mean, it seems to me that we're behind.
Kelly, can you to Joe's suggestion, could you make a quick calculation at some point in the evening, and when maybe at the end in the city manager's report, you could let us know what that number is, and we could address it at that point? Does council feel comfortable with that?
Let's get it in there.
Okay, so the proposal is 850 to 10, and it would be, I assume, immediate, again, pending the understanding of the budget impact.
Well, immediate meaning the 2015 budget year.
2015,
1
right.
January.
Yeah, starting January 1, yeah.
Fair.
Mr. Mayor, that decision wouldn't have to be made tonight regarding that hourly rate. You could make that before the 22nd so that we would have it incorporated into the budget. That came up only as a part of the discussion on the personnel policy because we were looking for a different alternative than the fire dinner.
So is that something that could go to the Finance Committee
Sure.
before the 22nd?
You want to hold off? Everybody comfortable? Holding off and...
Yeah, we can hold on. I also, just in terms of as a substitute for the dinner, I mean, it seems like this is something that should happen independent of that. Having never been a fireman or attended the dinner, I think there's a kind of a team-building kind of camaraderie that goes along with a dinner that recognizes, so I'm not sure that I would necessarily say trade one for the other.
I would agree with that.
I would agree with that. I had brought up at the last meeting for the safety piece, everybody else, again, I know that their volunteers got 4 hours of vacation, and dinner didn't seem quite, was there an other alternative? And that's where this question came from. But I agree that this whole pay piece is separate from this dinner component.
So if people are comfortable, we'll defer the discussion of the 850 to 10 hourly rate till the next city council meeting when we look at the preliminary budget. And in the meantime, the finance committee will take a look at it and assess the impact and be able to report that back at the next meeting. How about the sick leave severance policy? I mean, it seems that is kind of trying to thread a needle here. There are two extreme positions where we leave it as is, or we get rid of it altogether. But in the middle, there is a 720 hours, 30% after 15 years, amounts to $5,400 if someone were to play it out in total. I mean, how do people feel about? There's almost an infinite variety or number of alternatives we could embark here.
I guess I'm kind of, for lack of a better term, confused. When we went through this initially, when it was brought up by Don Urim, his recommendation, I think we talked about, was to have it removed, and now, and I'm not trying to play one against the other, I'm just kind of confused as to why one versus the other, and Ed, you're recommending that we keep it. I don't know if I fully understand the benefits of either yet.
Well, as a recruiting tool, then what does Chanhassen and Chaska, what's their policy?
They both have sick leave severance. And it's, for Chaska, or Chanhassen, it's 600 hours, and you get 50%, I believe.
So it's something along the lines of what you all are proposing?
Similar to what we have in place currently. It's a little bit lower on the hour scale, but several other cities surrounding us have that. Waconia has paid time off, so they do not have a severance piece, so that's one consideration.
In the hiring process, is that an aspect that is promoted to potential candidates? I guess for me, it's like, I'm a little surprised that somebody would think of that as a reason to take the job. And I worry a little bit that you're now encouraging people who are sick to come to work when they shouldn't be, and the loss of productivity, and is it sending the wrong message? We got a wellness thought on one side and a please come to work when you're sick because there's a pot of gold when you retire if you do.
Well, that's where I guess I'm kind of at. I don't mind leaving it. I just don't see the incentive. If the intent there is to incent someone for longevity, I think there are better things that we could do. But if this is a good recruiting tool, then fine. But that's where I guess I'm conflicted, or confused is the word I used earlier.
Yeah, so I guess my final thought is, if the purpose is to recruit, then some of these other alternatives might be better. If the purpose is to give people the freedom to stay home when they should, then we shouldn't incent them to not do that.
Sure.
I know you've done a lot of research, Jessica, in terms of what cities are currently doing.
Yes.
Is there any word out there in terms of what are the trends? What are people moving towards as we get a younger workforce involved, and that what are the trends in municipality hiring and recruiting?
Sure. One of the biggest trends seems to be flexibility in the workplace, so flex scheduling, things like that, results-oriented work where you have flexible schedules. That seems to be the biggest thing. When I spoke with the league about different incentives, that was really the one that they came back with as being the biggest things that our cities are currently doing.
Jessica, did you attempt to gather similar information from private sector as part of the research into this?
You know, we did not at this time. I can certainly take some more information and look at other private sector
Thank you.
entities.
I'm curious about that as well.
I know the trend tends to be moving towards a PTO model.
Yes.
Yep.
I know in our company, we made that switch within the last year as
Yeah.
well. And that's kind of where my basis of my comments comes from. is-
And that does seem to be the trend with, there are more and more cities going to a PTO system. And Lonnie, to your question before about the benefits to go to a health
Yes.
savings plan, you wouldn't actually have to, the employer wouldn't have to pay FICA taxes on that, so there would be a benefit to us
us.
to go to that, into that direction rather than just paying out.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Do I hear the need for more work, another alternative?
I don't feel like we're at a decision point yet.
Mr. Mayor, are there thoughts about the tuition reimbursement? Does that make sense, or the deferred comp, or any of these make any sense?
Yeah, it made sense to me, and we have none at the moment.
Right. Well, we have a deferred comp, but it's voluntary. And we have no tuition reimbursement. Those definitely are incentives.
Well, I'll take a stab. I move we send this back yet one more time to staff to investigate what? What were you looking for, Lonnie?
Well, I guess I see this issue with sick leave severance as one piece. I'd like to see us understand what the tuition reimbursement, if that was added, what the potential impact to budget would be if we added that, because I think that is something we should really look at anyways, as an addition. This severance piece, again, I think I'm wondering, is it something we should continue to hold on to? Should we be looking more at the impact of a PTO type program? What would that do to us? What would that help us with? Is there, again, just, it feels like every time we ask a question, we get more options and more discussion. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate all the time you've spent researching, but I'm just wondering, back to Jim's earlier point at the last meeting, what do we really do to incent and drive people to be here at Victoria? What recruits them here? And the realization that the coming workforce isn't as loyal, to be quite honest, to their employers. And again, there's opportunities to move from a Victoria to a Minneapolis, per se. I don't know what they pay, but again, you know, there's more movement, I think, than there used to be within a city government staff. So knowing those things, is the severance, sick pay severance, really a valuable tool? And maybe it is for those who have been with us that long, and there's something we need to consider there. But I mean, as a continued use within our pay structure, is it really something we need to continue to do?
Yeah, I'd hate to change it for the current employees, but again, I'm only one vote, but I'd certainly, Tom, you talked about the PTO model, and Lonnie, you did as well. Ed, is that something that you think could have potential merit for us?
Well, certainly. Many of the local government cities and counties have gone to PTO. The transition is kind of interesting because you have to figure out a formula by which they convert over from regular sick leave to PTO, which would include sick leave, vacation as well. So you have to put together a good conversion plan.
Right.
That's going to make sense for the city and for the employee. So it'll take a little bit of analysis, but we'll bring some information back to you.
Let me make a motion that we table this discussion, and you come back to us as soon as the next meeting
We'll try.
with the budget impact and the implications of a PTO model, and/or the adoption of a $10 an hour pay scale, I guess, for want of a better.
No, do we need to address
Tuition.
the chief too?
Yeah, I'm sorry, and one other point, and add in the tuition reimbursement program, we should cover at least all of those points. And Jim raises a question about
There's a deficit I mean, if we're addressing it across the board for the fire department, the chief needs to be included too.
Yeah. Okay. I made a motion. Anybody want a second? And
I'll second that.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Payment request for City Hall.
Kara, you have that one?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the first of several items related to the building projects. The first one is simply the August pay requests for the various contractors for City Hall and for our construction manager and for general conditions for City Hall in the amounts listed in the agenda item. So it would be to authorize payment in the amount of $301,601.08 for the contractors, and then $9,673.70 for Stahl. That puts payment for the contractors at about 30% of the total contract amount and 23% of the total amount for Stahl and general conditions. In terms of progress of where the City Hall is at, if you've been by there, it's really starting to look like a building now. The roof trusses were 75% installed last week. Roof sheathing is being installed on the northeast side and will progress west and southward as it moves along. After the roof is completed, the interior walls on the second floor will be built. Fire sprinkler piping installation has begun and electrical work is ongoing. Stonework is scheduled to begin shortly on the exterior. I think I heard today it was scheduled for Wednesday, but obviously that's weather dependent. So with that, I will take any questions.
When will the building be totally enclosed?
I was not at the weekly construction meeting this week, so well, we're just getting 3-week look-aheads right now, so
It's not in 3 weeks, huh?
no.
Still shooting for a year-end completion
Yep.
date?
Yep.
In general, how's the process going in terms of interaction with the construction management, with the contractors? Is it going well? Is it?
I think it's going well. We meet every week, so that meeting's attended by myself and the city manager and our construction manager and our on-site representative from the construction manager, and then the various different contractors. So Stahl is really doing all of the heavy lifting associated with keeping everybody on budget and on time, and interfacing with the architect, which is handy. It's a lot of work anyway for us. I can't imagine how much work we would be dealing with if we didn't have Stahl doing the role that they're doing, so.
Any pleasant or unpleasant surprises along the way?
Not, on City Hall, not really anything. It's a complex set of packages, so you have all these different contracts, and making sure that everything in the plans was covered in the contracts and everything fits together results in a lot of discussion between the different trades working on different items, but generally no. We'll talk about some change orders with the next agenda item, but nothing's really been extraordinary from my perspective.
Right. Well, I would make a motion to approve Agenda Statement 1462 and Resolution Number 14-31 to authorize payment in the amount of $301,601.08 for the contractors and $9,673.70 for Stahl Construction.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We approve the payment. Change order?
So the next item relates to 3 different change orders for the City Hall project. There actually have been a number of change orders on the project, but many of them are zero cost, so I'm not bringing all these no-cost changes to the city. Some of it is just clarification of some of the things that we talked about. But these 3 were larger in nature. 2 of them were primarily related to early changes that we made in the storefront windows. This actually was when Don Urim was still here, so I wasn't even really involved yet. But the library had requested some changes to the storefront windows. We changed the color. We changed to champagne, which was a cost increase. So this is follow-up on some of that paperwork for the storefront window, and then structural steel that needed to be changed to accommodate those revisions, and then some tweaks in the HVAC system. So in total, it results in an increase of the contract amount by $13,326.00. There are other proposal requests out there and things in process, but I don't have anything on my radar screen currently for City Hall as a potential big increase coming along the way for any elements. We're spending quite a bit of time now looking at the exterior of the building and looking at how the sidewalk and the ped ramp and a crosswalk need to interface with the parking lot across the street. We didn't specifically budget any modifications for the parking lot across the street, but I really think we're maybe going to want to do a couple of tweaks. If you drive into that parking lot in the first aisle, there's a curb there, so you can't exit. You have to back up and come back out onto Quamaclit or around to Steiger Lake Lane. I suspect we probably were trying to manage access points along that way, but now that we're going to have a library use there with kids, we probably need to look at adding a second curb cut so people can just drive straight onto Steiger Lake Lane on that westbound parking aisle and not back up. We need to put a crosswalk in and add another ped ramp on the other side. So none of those things are large cost changes, but they are things we're looking at. We've also talked about whether the intersection would meet stop sign warrants for adding a full stop condition to that intersection. I haven't looked at our warrant analysis yet. I think it probably could, but because of the on-street parking, there isn't anywhere to appropriately locate a stop sign at that intersection with parking stalls in the way. So we're also looking at whether there's some additional signage or striping that we want to look at to alert people that they're entering into a pedestrian area. With the ice cream shop, there's a lot of kids mingling very close to the road. So we're putting our heads together to see if we can come up with some good ideas for us to look at implementing.
Tonight's request, excuse me, is roughly $13,000 against a contingency of?
With that change getting approved, we would still, for City Hall, have about $95,000 in our contingency fund for the project for City Hall.
And the items that you just got through discussing, that laundry list of potential items, anywhere in your approach?
No. I don't have any information today that has me concerned that we're not going to be able to stay within the budget with the things I currently know.
Somebody want to make a motion? I'll make a motion to approve change orders numbers 1001, 1005, 1008, increasing the contract amount by $13,326.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We've approved the payment.
Can I make a quick correction on the last motion that I made? I incorrectly identified it as Agenda Statement 1462. That was the original project approval. That budget statement was actually, or agenda statement was actually 14-160 on the previous motion.
Did the recorder get that? I'll assume yes. Public Works Facility, August payment request.
So we have pay requests in front of us for the Public Works Facility in the amount of $308,096.06 for the contractors and $9,605.21 for Stahl. The contractor payments would represent about 27% of the current contract amount, and then 26% of Stahl's budget for general conditions and their fees. I guess I will let Ann provide an update on the buildings, so I can drink some water.
Mayor and Council, the siding on the east side of the building is actually in place. The intent is to start working on the roof this week. That is dependent on weather as well. The interior footings for the building are almost complete, and the wash bay footings were inspected and approved last week by the building inspection department. So we also are looking at some situations where we're seeking clarification from some of the contractors, from electrical locations, where we want our work tools. So those kind of things we are working through the process with our construction manager as well. So, and then the next item will be for discussion. While they were working on the drive, we're running into some soil issues there that we'll need to make a decision on, that Carol will be presenting later on. So, otherwise that process is moving well. They intend date to be completed by December. So we're still on track with that.
When it's completed, how long does it take to move?
It really shouldn't take all that long. We've, because a lot of the stuff's seasonal, we're going to keep at the existing facility. So a lot will be just mostly the trucks, and, we're slowly getting equipment for the new building. So we'll have that to move. So I can't imagine. Of course, it will depend on snow and when it falls. So that could hinder our time frame. But I can't imagine more than a week.
At the point of move-in, will all of the facilities like the fuel island and everything be fully functional and able to be fully utilized on move-in?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I'll make a motion that we approve agenda statement number 14-162 to authorize payment in the amount of $308,096.06 for the contractors and $9,605.21 for Stahl Construction.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We've approved, authorized that payment. Soils at the Public Works facility.
Mayor and council, the next item is potentially a hefty change order to discuss related to the Public Works building. So I think what I'll say first is that if we were to approve the recommendation that staff will present tonight, that would leave us with about $36,000 in contingency at Public Works. But with the type of construction that's occurring out there and what we know about the project, Ann and I are not uncomfortable with that number. It'd be better if it was a little bit higher, just because we're not done yet. But that construction is a little bit more straightforward than what we have at City Hall, where you have complex electrical and HVAC systems and wall systems and structural systems all fitting together. But by way of background, when the city constructs new streets, the council is aware that we always include a select granular borrow sand section underneath the gravel, because we find that our roads don't last if we don't have a drainage layer underneath that section. You can drive the Deer Run streets to see an example of roads deteriorating early that don't have that sand section. So historically then, when we construct parking lots, I always recommend that the city include a smaller drainage layer. So under streets, we put 2 feet. Under parking lots, I always recommend that we put 12 inches of sand. That recommendation has been incorporated in a lot of new parking lot situations, like the parking lot behind the Vic House, which was constructed as a more permanent use of that space that has 12 inches in it. But then even our lift station driveways, for our major lift stations, will include that sand section. So when we were working on reducing the budget for the overall building projects, one of the things that ended up getting deleted from the project was the inclusion of sand underneath the Class 5 at the parking lot. So if you go and look at the soils engineering report, that certainly is as a comparison, the parking lots at St. Victoria Church, they don't have the sand underneath them. So many entities within the city, private entities that don't have that have parking lots that we didn't build, elected to build them without the sand section. So it wasn't a crazy thing to consider cutting out of the project. But now that the soils have all been exposed, both our construction manager and our earthwork contractor are having a hard time getting the soils compacted and stabilized to the point where they can put the Class 5 down over the top of them. What they're experiencing is completely typical for all of the soils we encounter in the city. So they asked us to really reconsider whether we would look at putting the sand section in. So we got some ideas from them and some costs from them to change the scope of the plans to include sand. Their costs were all typical, so even though we were adding this work after the fact, they aren't asking for an unreasonable dollar amount. In fact, some of the items were lower than I typically see for adding sand under our sections. So what I would be recommending that the city consider adding would be subcutting 12 inches underneath the Class 5 and putting 12 inches of sand. Once you put that sand in, you have to have drain tile in so that water doesn't get trapped in the sand section between all the clay. If the water gets trapped there, then it's just going to heave during freeze-thaw cycle. So we want to have the drain tile in there to carry the water away from the sand section. That would generate an additional, I don't remember how many yards, 1,164 cubic yards of material that really should be hauled off site so that we don't suddenly have a big sledding hill that we just put on the site in order to move it later. So what I was recommending was that we look at items number 1 through 5 in my agenda statement. 6 and 7 certainly could be considered adding fabric under the sand, and in some areas changing the sand to rock in some of the areas that are less stable. I don't think we have the budget for those 2 adds, so I'm not recommending them. So what this gives us, the way I look at it is when I have this conversation with private people building their parking lots in the city, it's a choice of whether you want to have a lower capital cost and a higher operation and maintenance cost, or the other way around. So you're certainly spending more right now if you add this into your parking lot, but the maintenance costs for the parking lot are going to be significantly lower. If we don't add the sand, then if those of you who drove 86th Street before we reconstructed it, I think we'll see problems like that because we're still going to have heavy trucks coming in here, you know, loaded dump trucks, snowplow trucks. They're pretty heavy. So what you'll see over time is that those soils are going to keep moving. And so if we put any pavement over the top of them, they're going to break up and need to be patched and fixed over time. So it certainly is a lot of money. All of the ones I'm recommending total $42,500, but it would be something that I would recommend. If we decide to not make those changes, then the recommendation I would have to the City Council is that we wait to pave the driveway so that we let it sit through a winter, through a freeze-thaw cycle, and that would maybe help some of the soil stabilize a little bit more. Otherwise, you have the cost of patching bituminous, where if you just have Class 5, we could haul in additional Class 5 as we start to see rutting, and maybe look at adding the pavement next year. So that was a lot of information, and I'll take however many questions you have.
Comments?
So to kind of help clarify I'll call it an ROI here. If we elected not to do this, would you make a recommendation, or what recommendation would you make for additional annual maintenance budgeting?
It really is going to depend on what those soils do during the frost and heave. You know, we have areas, I'll take Lions Park, for example, in the gravel driveway. We have frost boils that are huge. I mean, you can't even drive on them. Otherwise, you will sink, foot down. And it's just that movement of the soil, because it gets so wet in there that it has nowhere to go. So that's where it sticks. So, that's my fear, that we're going to have a mess out there if we leave it gravel. for any length of time. Can we get through by a year? Maybe. But that traffic that we are going to generate with the heavier trucks, it makes me a little bit nervous to not do it the right way. I think we're just going to have consistent maintenance issues, tracking mud out onto Bavaria. I don't think it's a real good option, but.
If we go ahead and accept the recommendation, again, recognizing the kind of soils we have, does it make sense to still wait? And I'm thinking when I widened my driveway at my old house, I waited through one winter cycle anyways, just for the purposes of settling. Does it make sense to do that anyways and then make these improvements to give ourselves a little extra margin of?
Typically, what we'll do on the city streets is we'll put one lift of asphalt down and then wait to put the second lift down till the following year. That's what we do in all the new developments. So that probably would be worth considering. But with the sand and the gravel, the sand works wonders to address the problems that we see in the areas without the sand. So we would have to see whether our price would still be honored. I don't know that it would be worth waiting another year if it was going to cost us more to put the second lift of asphalt down. When we reconstruct streets, if we don't do a lot of utility replacement, generally it does fine once the sand's in there without waiting that second year.
My last question is, does the addition of the drain tile there change the drainage runoff situation at all?
No, it'll just get discharged into the ditch areas that flow into our biofiltration area.
Thank you.
If we were to approve this, your recommendation, 42.5 comes out of the current contingency, what's left?
That would leave about $36,204 in the Public Works line item. Now, I am managing them together, so certainly if we ran into a situation where we needed more money at Public Works, we'd look at where we were in the City Hall budget. But overall, that would leave us with about $130,000 between the two buildings, which is pretty good with how far into the projects we already are. It's a pretty decent amount.
And that's really, I guess, where my question lies, is what do you both see as risk points going forward, where in your crystal ball, I need to watch out for this?
I'll speak for City Hall. It's more of just a sense or a feeling. There's just so many different pieces to that building that I remain nervous about them all fitting together and there not being something else missing between the different budgets. But everything that's come up has been, this $8,000 one was the big one. They've all been more like $2,500 or $500 or $300. So I don't have any information to suggest that there's a big one waiting in the wings at City Hall. I just am happy we still have that big of an amount left. You can speak for your
and on Public Works, nothing stands out right now that would cause concern, because we're trying to manage each of those, line items within the budget, from equipment and moving. So nothing really stands out right now that I know of today.
Yeah, it is important to probably add that we have our furniture numbers coming in now, but we don't have our low voltage numbers, and that was a bit of a guesstimate when we started, so that's maybe the other unknown. Well, unknown's not really a fair word. Our consultant wasn't concerned when we told him our budget, so.
With respect to this driveway specifically, are you pretty confident we found everything there is to find and there's not going to be any more surprises if we approve this and go ahead and begin the excavation?
Yeah, I think we're soil-wise in good place. They have a pretty good handle of what's out there. I talked with Leroy, our superintendent from Stahl, quite a bit about the project and walked the site with them and talked with our earthwork contractor quite a bit, who has a lot of experience with our soils, and they both were in agreement with the recommendation that I was bringing forward as being what we need to do.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Yeah, I can't see the front door to that building being shabby with rutted gravel and cracked pavement. I mean, we gotta, as long as we got the money, we gotta, I think we ought to do it right. And I'll make a motion to, with respect to agenda statement 14-163, that we approve, excuse me, staff's recommendation to include the first 5 items on that agenda statement.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You got 42,500, Kara. The City Hall server and virtualize the phone.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'll have Jenny Kretsch come up and give a report on this, and we also have a representative from our software company with her.
Hi, thank you, Mayor and Council. I have Dan Melling from Solution Builders here. He's our IT consultant. This request is coming forward to accomplish many goals. Ultimately, we need to replace our server due to the age and the hardware is no longer supported. Also, our recreation center server is 11 years old. When we got the fiber connection, we had intended to merge the rec center server onto our existing City Hall server, but we did not have the capacity to do that. With replacing the City Hall server, we'll be able to accomplish that. And with the new City Hall server, we would also eliminate the need to purchase a new phone system, which is budgeted for 2015, by virtualizing the existing phone system onto the new server. Also, part of this project would be to move the server over to the water treatment plant. Originally, that was the intent, to house everything there. That's where our phone system server is currently at. And by putting it there, we would eliminate concerns for the Emergency Operations Center, because our network would stay up if there was an emergency, because there's a backup generator. With the flooding and that, we ran into an instance where we lost power here. They lost network and connectivity. By moving it over there, we'd retain that connectivity because there is a backup generator for the facility. And I've got Dan here if you have any technical questions on the proposal, but that's kind of the just in the need of why we need to replace the server. And again, by virtualizing our phone system as part of this onto the new server, we're going to eliminate the need to purchase the new phone system for about possibly 5 to 7 years, with a minimal cost of labor and IT technical support to virtualize it. The ShoreTel, our phone system server, is at capacity and is no longer supported either, so it would either need to be replaced at this point if we don't go this route to virtualize it onto a new server.
I'm going to look to
I open that up to any...
Jim for...
I open that up to any technical
Let me just ask
questions.
a specific question. These two acquisitions have nothing to do with the new location? We would be doing this even if we had...
We would be doing this even if we didn't have the new facility, but
Okay.
we're also going to have some new systems, different things that will be added to that our existing one would not have the capacity to do so at this point, such as some of the digital signage that we're going to have in the entryway, security systems. There's some different software pieces and applications that we're kind of running out of space for, and just due to the age, things are kind of slowing down. And as far as the Recreation Center server, it's 11 years is pretty old.
I hear it. I see a big person.
Yeah, we're just, very lucky at this point that nothing has happened to it.
So in the quick math category here, it looks to me like between 2013, 2014, and 2015, we had budgeted just short of $62,000 to handle sort of the functionality of this request. And by doing it this way today, we're doing it for $37,800 or something like that. Does that sound about right?
That is correct.
Any questions?
Then I'll make a motion that we approve Agenda Statement 14-164 to approve the preparation, purchase, and installation of the new server and the virtualization upgrade of the city's ShoreTel phone system in the amount of $34,184.95 for the server and $2,520 for the phone system upgrade. Is that?
That is correct.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Get a new server. Jenny, just one question. When could this be, will it be installed in this building?
It will not be installed in this building. We will move it to the water treatment plant. There's an IT closet there.
I'm sorry, you said that. But when will it be installed? I guess what I was getting at.
Prior to moving into the new city hall, approximate time frame?
We could move quickly now, probably within 30 days.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
The sewer lining project. New business item B.
Mayor, City Council, we have approximately 740 feet of 8-inch sewer line that runs along Highway 5 from Petunia down to County Road 11 that has been in disrepair for a number of years. We've had issues with trying to get it repaired and trying to deal with, do we open cut, do we line it? We had the Highway 5 project, so we didn't want to have to shut roads down. So finally this year we're to the point where we really need to get it taken care of. There's some landscaping, significant landscaping along one of the areas where we would have to go in, and if we open cut it, it would be quite disruptive. So our proposal, and we've been trying to deal, like I said, over a couple of years to try to get estimates from contractors to even come in and do a short project like this. When the Met Council project was under construction, just even getting these guys that were in town to submit a quote for it was a challenge just because of the short distance of the pipe. But we'd be looking at doing much the same thing as the Met Council did, was doing a lining project in it. Right now it's cracked. We have trees, roots that grow through it, so it's a constant maintenance challenge for us, and one that we have to check on weekly. So we finally were able to get some quotes again this year, with Visasewer being the lowest quote at $24,239.20. And then Roto-Rooter coming in at about $77,250. Over the course of the last couple years, we've had estimates in that $22,000 to $24,000 range, much like the expert in the Visasewer quote. So those are that's the company that we are recommending going with. And this is a budgeted item within the sewer operating budget, and one that really needs to get taken care of. So staff is recommending moving forward with that, but I'd be open to any questions.
Are there other segments in similar condition?
We are close to not having many more of these. This was an old part of town. As the reconstructions occur, there's new stuff coming in. When most of the flow is coming from Lions Park before it goes down, not the park itself, but the Lions Park neighborhood, before it goes down into the Met Council line. And I am not sure why we didn't get this piece when we redid Lions Park, but I think it...
For the same issues of being along Highway 5 and needing to...
Yeah, work that one out. Yeah, so...
open cut it.
Where's the location again?
It's on the south side of Highway 5 from Petunia to County Road 11.
In the boulevard.
Right.
So, a couple questions. The comment about tree roots and cracking the pipes, was that, is the new, the liner more impervious to tree roots, or how will that be dealt with on a more permanent basis? So the new...
Yeah, so what they do is they take a plastic liner and go in through a manhole and steam it, and then once it's steamed, it really becomes a hard plastic that doesn't break. So that's what, there's no joints.
So it's much like what they did over by
Steger.
Steger,
Correct.
right?
Yep. On a much smaller scale than theirs, though.
And then, kind of to the disparity of the quotes, and if you read into the detail, it's actually even bigger than that, because a lot of what's included in the Visu Sewer quote is extra in the... Do they really understand? Why is there such a big gap there? Are they missing something? Is there a risk?
Based on what I know and other quotes that I've received over the past couple years, it's right in line. The Visu Sewer one is right in line with all the rest of the actual professionals that do this sort of work. We had a real hard time with even somebody to call us back to get a quote on this small of a project. So I don't believe that Roto-Rooter obviously I don't think that's their business, but it's the type of, they will do this type of work based on this price. I don't know how often.
What about our experience with this particular contractor, or any references to, again, give us confidence that we're...
I know that Ed has worked with this company before, so I will...
Visu Sewer is an outstanding firm. We've used them in other places I've been, and they do excellent work. Well known in the industry.
Thank you.
How will this affect the residents along that? Are they digging through their yards? Is it tunneling, or?
No, there's two manholes that we'll go through, and basically they start at one manhole and go all the way through, and we've only got 2 connections on it, and then they just go in and drill those connections. So
Traffic will be...
Yeah, traffic will be impacted. We'll probably have to shut a lane of traffic down while they do that work on 5, but I don't anticipate it being a very long shutdown, and we'll try to avoid the rush hour.
So, total length of time for the project?
I can't imagine it'll take more than a day.
Is the sewer non-functional?
It is functional, but it needs to be monitored to make sure that it stays open.
Somebody want to make a motion?
I move that we approve Agenda Statement Number 14-165 to approve the sewer lining project adjacent to Highway 5 by Visu Sewer at a cost of $24,239.20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Project is approved. Trail paving, Allegheny Grove.
Mayor, City Council, the city has a neighborhood trail improvement program that identifies trail improvements throughout the community, whether that be paving existing gravel trails. A couple years ago, we did the trail section along County Road 11, south of 80, or not south of 86, south of 18, where it was just broken and cracked and just beyond its age. So those are the kind of neighborhood trail improvements that are identified within this program. Several years ago, the Allegheny Grove Trail, which is about 2,360 feet long, it surrounds a wetland and has several neighborhood connections. Thank you. Several neighborhood connections up that hit into the neighborhoods. There's approximately 50 homes that are right on the trail, and then another 100 that are kind of in that outlying area that utilize this trail. One of the challenges that we have with the gravel trails is just the upkeep and maintenance on them. Grass, weeds grow in them. They need to be sprayed at least 2 times a year. Gravel added. And just with the existing maintenance staff that we have, it just becomes a challenge to try to maintain them. So I've provided kind of a very rough estimate on about $5,000 annually that is needed on these trails to add gravel, to groom them, to add or to spray them a couple times a year. And then the paving cost, we went and solicited 3 quotes from pavers. Local pavers. The Prior Lake Blacktop is actually the one that's doing the trail along 5 and Bavaria, or 5 and Rolling Acres. They came in at the lowest cost of $34,470. So that is the recommendation of staff, that we approve the Prior Lake blacktopping quote to take care of the Allegheny Grove paving. It'd be a shape and pave. Roughly about a 7-year payback on maintenance versus paving. And you're looking at that, if the maintenance is done on them, you're looking at a 25-year life or more on these trails, so paved. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Joe?
Thank you. Why wasn't the trail paved in the first place?
That's a good question. Do you know the answer to that?
Before my time.
Yeah. The two developments that for some reason didn't get paved was the Woodlands and the Allegheny Grove, and I don't know if at the time it was done for environmental purposes. I know the trail in the Woodlands sits fairly close to some wetlands. But yeah, unfortunately it was before my time, so whether it was a cost factor, I can't answer that.
Can I infer?
Anymore, we would make them pave it unless it was something that couldn't be paved.
Can I infer that the Woodlands Trail is still unpaved?
Correct. That's I believe, identified in the next round of...
So the environmental sensitivity is something we can work through? Is that?
And I don't, yeah, that was just a guess on my part as to why that didn't get done. I'm really not sure.
Would that incur a rough similar cost to the 34,000? The Woodland?
Is it about the same, right?
But yeah,
Yes, close. I would say yes. Fairly close.
How long ago was this originally constructed?
2000,
Before that.
was it 4?
99.
Oh, okay.
Before I got here in 2001.
In terms of winter usage, I know a lot of the trails today are getting maintained or, kept clear during the winter. Is this one able to be cleared in the winter with it in its current state?
No, we do not clear this one in the winter.
Would the intent be for that to change once it's paved?
It will really depend on the priority and the staffing level that we have. We try to, our top goal is with the trail system, is we try to, destination.
Connections?
Yes. This I would see as a secondary trail system.
And I assume that's consistent with how we treat inter-neighborhood trails in any other subdivision?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
any other questions, comments for Ann? Somebody like to make a motion?
I move that we approve Agenda Statement Number 14-166 to approve the paving of the trail in Allegheny Grove at a cost of $34,470 by Prior Lake Blacktop Incorporated.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We've approved the paving of the trail. Reports of the city manager.
I don't have any unless you wanted to have Kelly come back with some numbers.
Well, you went to the trouble to create the numbers. I suppose we ought to give you the courtesy of at least listening. Kelly, we put you under the gun here a little bit. If it's, I mean, qualify this as much as you need to.
Well, what I did is I looked at our overall budget, and then I subtracted out what we pay for our officers, and then assumed that that remaining amount was our hourly wage base. So if we were to increase fire department wages by $1.50 per hour, the impact would be about $11,000 when you factor in both the wages and Social Security and Medicare taxes. So if you went to $1 an hour, it's $7,400. 50-cent an hour increase would be $3,700 annually.
Any instinctive reaction to the council? And otherwise, we'll wait till the finance committee has a chance to review it, and you'll come back to the council at the next meeting. Everyone okay?
Yeah. Good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
And the city manager, we go back to you. You have anything to report?
Nothing else.
I want to, under the reports, a couple of things. One, it's listed here as item A, the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District support to videotape meetings. It came as a surprise to me about 4 or 5 years ago when, as a council member, I went and addressed the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District meeting, the Board of Managers, and was fairly shabbily received, as I recall. Kara was there and has fond memories, I'm sure. The relationship with the Watershed District, though, I think, in fairness, has improved over the last couple of years. But there's still a glaring error in the way business is approached by these folks. They're all appointed by county commissioners. They're appointed, yet they have the power to levy taxes. In 2014, they have a budget of $13 million with a levy of $7.9 million. And there's no oversight. No one elected them. And their meetings aren't televised. There's a movement afoot amongst many of the area mayors to request, demand, suggest, require, to the extent we have influence, that the meetings at least be videotaped and be made available on the public broadcasting channels so that the public can, if they choose to, could be aware of the way they do business in the first instance and the money that they're playing with, if you will, in terms of their projects and the amount of levy. $8 million levy. And there's there isn't, you can't, in order to find out what they're doing, you got to read their reports or go to a meeting. What if you had it on television, if you chose to? I guess that's my point. I'd like the council to authorize me to prepare a letter similar to Shorewood, Orono, I mean, there's half a dozen cities, Excelsior, that have sent a letter requesting, suggesting, wishing that they would provide video screening of their meetings. And with that, I'll ask the council for authorization to do such a letter.
I'll make a motion for that.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's done.
Can I ask one more?
Joe?
Can you make sure you ask them to actually post that on the website as well?
Record it
So
and then
it
hide
doesn't, they don't just put it on, so you don't
Yeah.
have to actually sit in front of your TV and wait for it.
Yep.
I sense some cynicism.
Well, just to make
Fair,
sure.
though.
That's
Yeah.
a very good point. I
Agreed.
still sense the cynicism, appropriately placed, I might add. With council's indulgence, and I wish he was here, he left, Mr. Gooby, left us with a 2-page letter that we will take a look at. I will lead the effort to review it and decide whether comment is required. A couple of things jump out at me, though, and I got to be careful because we are absolutely forbidden to talk about the elements of the lawsuit. And in the the fourth paragraph in Mr. Gooby's letter, he says, "You and other defendants have not denied breaking the open meeting law." No, that's correct. We haven't denied. We're not allowed to say anything. There will come a time when we will have our day in court, and I'd ask the residents to be patient and let's see how the thing plays out. This group filed an administrative petition with IPAD, the administrative arm of the state of Minnesota, and it was withdrawn. They subsequently filed criminal charges against us, criminal charges. They were dismissed. And now we're into the civil suit arena, where, if I read the statement correct, no, I don't want to, just want to be careful. Throughout this, it presumes we're guilty. And that's not the American system. We are innocent until otherwise proven, and we're not allowed to make statements to the specifics of the case until the time is right. And we await that time. Believe me, I would love to be able to comment on the specifics, as would I'm sure some of my colleagues, but that'll wait for another time.
Well, I want to add to that as well, and I appreciate you taking the lead on that, Tom. In the second to last paragraph, this is the language is consistent with the kind of misrepresentations and innuendo that we've seen repeatedly from this group. Specifically, he talks about only half the truth. Well, we're certainly not privy to what conversations have taken place between the plaintiffs and their lawyers, but this is a statement that's 100% true. It was taken from an article in the Minnesota Watchdog, which Mr. Gooby actually was interviewed for, and they stated, we've got an attorney that's taking it pro bono. And beyond that, the statement that it was taken after the managing partners found that the case had merit. Sure, based on the plaintiff's statements, not based on a review of both sides, but just simply his position. So I think that this continues to try to cast guilt where none has been proven.
And I reiterate my statement to Mr. Gooby when he was here, that I stand by the statement, the elements of the statement that I made that was published subsequently in both local newspapers. Anybody else?
There are a whole bunch of things I'd like to say in due time.
I'll take a motion to adjourn if nothing else. Joe?
I just want to ask, get an update on the Arboretum Trail, because my daughter asks every time I drive by.
It's all graded and ready to go.
And has been graded and ready to go.
I know, and the test roll, I'm just trying to remember the update I got from my assistant today on when they were paving. I know they got, Prior Lake Blacktop, who's doing the paving, got delayed on some other projects, so isn't here yet, but I think she said the test roll was today, which would typically happens pretty close to when they're going to come in and do the paving. So the driveways are all saw cut, so she didn't tell me which day for sure, but I know it's soon. They are supposed to be done substantially by the 15th, so.
With due notice in respect to Joe's daughter, that's an important, would you get a deadline or a date that's going to be paved and get it out to us?
Yeah.
Or put it on the website or somehow?
Yep. Oh, sure. A website update would probably be very appropriate.
Yeah, because this is a big deal.
Yeah.
Will there be any sort of a ribbon cutting or grand opening of this? I mean, this is, to Tom's
The
point.
person on our staff who typically thinks of those things isn't here anymore. So typically, Ann and I don't think of things like ribbon cuttings. We think of things like snowplows and paving trucks. But, that's certainly something that staff can talk about.
Yeah, that needs to be coordinated. The Arboretum and we have a vested interest in this thing succeeding, or being completed and succeeding, and it shouldn't go unnoticed in the public eye.
There was also, I think, a Trails Coalition, and I'm forgetting the name of that group, who was also advocating for the finishing of this trail system as well. They made
Bob Mueller?
Well, and much like we did this summer, there was a ribbon cutting down here to open it to Chaska. And we had all the county supervisors, and so I think
this is
similar.
This is a big deal.
$350,000 chunk of investment.
Right.
Tell your daughter to be patient, Joe.
I've been trying.
I actually did see somebody driving on the gravel trail today, or riding their bike on the gravel trail today.
Anything else? Any other council wish to make a statement? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.